Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're unpacking a truly massive and, frankly, pretty surprising organizational rollout. There's been a whole lot of anticipation building up, and today we finally have the complete data in front of us. We are looking at the grand reveal of the Princess Heartline third batch roster. And when I say massive, I mean absolutely massive. 168. We aren't just talking about a handful of representatives here. This is a sweeping, large-scale deployment of 168 individual members. I mean, just managing a group this size requires incredible logistics, and it's genuinely fascinating to see how they've actually structured the whole shebang. Now, before we get into the names, let's establish the exact context for this deployment, because honestly, this is where it gets really unexpected. According to the source data, this 168-member roster is specifically a Gen Z initiative designated for the 20th Congress of the Philippines. And the figures directly tied to launching this initiative are Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano and House Speaker Boji Dai. So we're really looking at this incredible convergence of youth culture explicitly built around a very specific governmental session. So, how do we make sense of 168 names without getting totally overwhelmed? Well, we're going to use a funnel structure. First, we'll look at the grand reveal unveiled. Then we'll break down the featured and main rosters, move right into the official and extended lists, look at the legacy and final rosters, cap it off with the favorite selection, and finally, wrap up by looking at the global and national reach. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the grand reveal unveiled. And this is all about strict categorization. Because, think about it, when you have 168 members, you can't just throw them onto a single list. That would be total chaos, right? It turns out they're distributed completely evenly across 7 distinct tiers. If you do the math, that is exactly 24 members per roster. We've got the featured, main, official, extended, legacy, final, and my favorites rosters. It's just a highly structured macro view that perfectly categorizes this massive deployment before we even zoom in on the specific names. Moving right along to Section 2, the featured and main rosters. Let's look at the top tiers. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer concentration of prominent names. It just hits you right away. The featured roster holds major heavy hitters. We're talking Catherine Bernardo, Janela Salvador, Liza Soberano, and Bel Mariano. And right beside them, the main names roster is equally stacked with Gen Z talent like Andrea Brillantes and Shirel Manabat. It essentially establishes an absolute powerhouse front for the initiative right out of the gate. Seeing this level of sheer A-list celebrity organized for a congressional deployment, it's a truly fascinating and, quite frankly, unexpected crossover. Let's funnel down to Section 3, the official and extended lists, where we see the roster expanding. So this is where the structural expansion really kicks in. The official list introduces 24 more members, bringing in names like Atasha Mulak and Kaori Oinuma. And, parallel to that, the extended roster broadens the net even further with names like Nancy Jewel McDonough and Angie Salvacion. They've essentially categorized 48 more individuals here without losing an ounce of that overarching symmetry. It's just a highly efficient way to map out this kind of unbelievable scale. Next up, Section 4, the legacy and final rosters. These are our penultimate batches. I want you to notice the naming conventions here. Words like legacy and final definitely imply a different kind of specialized status within the batch, right? The legacy roster features incredibly prominent names like Jillian Ward and Francine Diaz. And right beside it, the final roster rounds out another 24 names, including Miles Ocampo and Zia Dantes. It's fascinating because it strictly continues the pattern, exactly 24 members each, ensuring flawless organizational integrity, even past the 120-member mark. Which brings us to Section 5, the favorite selection, the final piece of our puzzle. This uniquely designated My Favorites roster is quite literally the crucial final piece to complete 168-member grid. It includes fantastic stars like Kylan Alcantara, Zainab Harake, and Cassie Legaspi, among others. It's got a slightly more personalized naming convention compared to the rest, but it perfectly caps off the sprawling list. With this, we have officially found structural homes for all 168 members of the third batch. And finally, Section 6, Global and National Reach. Let's look at the actual objective. Okay, so we've answered the who and the how, but we absolutely need to pivot back to the why. Why does this matter? Well, the source material explicitly states this is for 20th Congress of the Philippines, for global and national. That is a direct quote.
This is not just a random, fun compilation of 168 Gen Z figures. It is a highly intentional, incredibly organized deployment aiming for immense geopolitical reach. Which really leaves us with this final pivotal thought. We've seen the 168 names, we've explored the perfectly balanced 7 tiers, and we understand the stated geopolitical stage. But how will a 168 number Gen Z deployment actually shape the 20th Congress? It's a completely fascinating question about the real-world impact and application of this highly structured group, and honestly, one we will all just have to watch very closely to find out. Thanks for diving into this explainer with me.